Well, hello and welcome, folks. My name is Ryan Chapman, and I'm here with my awesome co-host, Mary DeGrazia. Mary, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. For folks who are not yet familiar with our show, and how dare you, this is the Stay Ahead of Ransomware. I went like this for some reason. Live stream. We run this once a month on the first Tuesday of the month, and we basically bring on a guest to talk about something related to ransomware. In this case, we have a really cool show lined up for you. But before we get to that, hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the author of Forensics 528 for SANS, the ransomware and cyber extortion course. I also teach Forensics 610, reverse engineering malware, which is actually how I got hooked up with authoring 528. A co-host of our yearly ransomware summit, which we just had, in May, recently, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago, whatever. And very, very excited that we get to continually bring new evolving threats, information related to ransomware to the audience. So I'm very happy that you have all joined in on this episode, or you're watching it later, recorded on YouTube, whatever. Mary is the instructor, the second in charge, really, for 528. She also teaches Forensics 500. That's the Windows Forensic Analysis course. Mary, you have something in the works going on
I do.
with the course. What's that?
I have the 4563 course, which is going to be related to using local large language models. So basically local AI to do digital forensics and incident response. So we'll be covering, how to keep your data secure and private while working with AI, because I think a lot of us know we can't always just go copy and paste stuff right into the browser for some of these bigger providers out there, right?
Yes, it took me a while to get on the AI bandwagon. I finally did. I use it on a daily basis. And at this point, I still find that there's so much more to do with AI. So I'm very excited for that. I've offered to help Mary review her course, mostly because I just want to learn what she's throwing down, to be honest with you. So, welcome everyone. If you are tuned in right now, we would love to know where are you coming from? From where do you hail around the globe? We have, oh, there we go, from India. Thank you, Ajay, for jumping in. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know what's going on with you. And throughout the entire episode, please provide questions. Ask us whatever questions you may have. Questions, questions, questions. Bring them our way. As a note, we're going to be talking about pre-ransomware notification, specifically with our guest, who I will intro right now, Dave Stern from CISA. Dave, how you doing, man?
Hi, Ryan. Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me here today. Doing all right.
Very happy to have you on. I've been in a couple different working groups where I've seen Dave do some amazing work. And we're going to be talking today about pre-ransomware notification, an initiative that CISA has set up. And this just brings a lot of joy to me. I worked for 5 years, 5 whole years, before my wife told me, you're done doing that, incident response consulting. And my largest cases by far have usually been ransomware cases. In some cases, ransomware incidents are kind of easy to handle for those of us who work or worked in incident response consulting. It's the same thing over and over and over and over. For the victim entity or organization, it's one of the worst days, weeks, months, years of their professional careers. It's just horrible. Being able to receive pre-notification to say, hey, you need to get ahead of this right now, and to do, to offer that type of service through the support of the global community, more on that coming up, is just fantastic to me. So Dave, to you and your team, thank you for what you do. And speaking of what you do, let's talk about this. You've been with CISA for over a decade. You've worked mostly with state level governments and nation states, and your current focus is on ransomware. Duh, hence why you're here. So give us any more background you want to share, anything about yourself, CISA, the organization, for folks who may not be aware.
Sure. So working with state and local governments for quite some time, I think a lot of folks know that that community was really disproportionately affected by ransomware, among the highest victimization. And so we decided here at CISA that we need to do something about that. We need to give a longer time horizon based on information that may be shared with us to warn folks. So getting started back in 2022, but really making more of an impact in terms of the number of notifications that we were able to get on target in 2023. We started the Pre-Ransomware Notification Initiative. And in short, this is an initiative where we work with security researchers and industry. They share information with us related to early stage pre-ransomware activity. This is usually an ongoing intrusion likely to lead to ransomware deployment. And right up front, pretty much all the credit goes to our partners, the researchers, and the folks in industry who work with us, who collaborate with us. What do we do here? We take action immediately to warn the affected entity to stop data exfiltration and ransomware deployment. So in short, what we're trying to do here is stop economic damage that can impact the American taxpayer and American businesses.
That is absolutely fantastic. The devastation, the fallout that comes from a ransomware event, even if there's no encryption and it's more of a cyber extortion, which follows the same patterns up into not deploying an encryptor, is just devastating. And being able to stop an attack prior to encryption and be aware of it because our government entity steps in and says, hey, not so much, there's a problem, go fix it, is just great. You mentioned the global community and threat researchers. So in general, a lot of folks in the threat intel community worry about sharing. We've we have developed the traffic light protocol. For folks not aware, that you can just simply Google traffic light protocol, and you'll find information related to clear, green, amber, amber plus strict, red. We have these levels of, you can share these particular things I'm going to tell you with the following individuals or groups, but not with others. And we, overall, when you're working an IR case, a lot of times there are NDAs or, contracts that need to be signed and this and that and this and that. But there's a global community of threat researchers who do their darndest to basically provide their services for free to the government and, for that matter, to the victim organizations. So why do you think that these threat researchers share their information with CISA, and how does that transpire, and so on and so forth?
Sure. So I think it all starts with their motivation. These folks are sharing out of altruism, and also because often in the past, they may have been rebuffed when trying to reach out to affected entities directly who didn't understand that they're trying to help. In addition to that, another reason why researchers might want to share with us is that we strictly respect traffic light protocol, or TLP, share and other sharing restrictions that might be imposed by the sharing party. So this is their understanding, their information, their visibility. We've got to show that we're good partners, that we're trustworthy by respecting TLP and any other restrictions that they might put on the information. In addition, something that a lot of folks may not know about is that there may be certain liability protections that are afforded under the CISA 2015 law for parties that share cyber threat indicators or defensive measures with CISA. So these are people, they may want to share information, but they want to make sure that they're receiving all the protections that they can under the law, as long as they remove PII that is not necessary as part of cyber threat information from what they're sharing with us. And then I think one of the important parts and unique things that I want to talk about is that we share feedback. We share feedback on what we learn as a result of acting on the information that's shared with us. So this is really important because there's a clear feedback mechanism to hold us accountable. I think that's rather important when it comes to public service. So just in the same way that the folks sharing information with us about an ongoing ransomware event are aware of it, they can see if we're acting faithfully on the information that they share with us, if that's stopping soon afterwards. So that's the feedback that we try to provide to the folks sharing with us, and the assurance that we try to provide to show that we are acting on the information that we receive.
I did have a follow-up question to that when you're talking about notifying and working with victims. So I know previously, I remember I worked a case where a third party reached out, and it wasn't a government agency. It was just a third party that had found out that our client had been compromised. And it was always, what's their angle? Like, are they trying to get the work? Like, are they the threat actors? They didn't quite know what to think of this random third party reaching out to them to let them know that they had been compromised. So how is it that you notify your victims, and how do you kind of work around that? Do you typically see if you know somebody within the organization, or you share a common point of contact that can broker the introduction, or how does that happen exactly?
So we've got regional folks called cybersecurity advisors out there across the country, and they are building these relationships, these partnerships ahead of time, so that we're a known quantity. These folks are known to the critical infrastructure organizations, the businesses that they serve. I will tell you that there's a whole process that we kind of go through here. We're not just blindly passing on information that we receive. We're vetting that information that we receive. We're confirming attribution of the affected entity. Some of the things that we see, which I'll cover briefly so folks understand what we're talking about, is we see a lot of social engineering. So folks may be familiar with that from some of the recent COM-associated threat actor activity targeting the retail sector. We see a lot of impersonation of IT over soft phone applications. Obviously, this is something that can be addressed through regular awareness training that helps rank and file employees understand their role in the larger organization for protecting it. We see exploitation of internet-facing vulnerabilities. So a lot of the times, this is things like SSL VPNs that are being exploited. Some of the recent activity related to Microsoft SharePoint that industry has tied to nation-state actors is another example of the types of activity that we're seeing. This is something that could just be addressed with having a basic patch management program, prioritizing the patching of internet-facing vulnerabilities, and also known exploited vulnerabilities from CISA's KEV, or known exploited vulnerability catalog. We see a lot of malvertising or abuse of search engine optimization to deliver impersonator or imposter executables that appear to be your favorite app. So just a lot of people clicking on things. And we see the proliferation of a lot of adversary in the middle phishing as a service kits. The threat actors use these because they're a good way where with multi-factor tokens. So once we've got the information, we reach out immediately through those established relationships that I was mentioning, often through our regional personnel. These are our hardworking cybersecurity advisors around the country. If you don't know who yours is, please contact CISA Central. We'll get you fixed up with that. We draft customized notification language with actionable details to investigate and mitigate. That's specific to the situation, and there's nothing generic there. And then after notifying, like I mentioned, we pay forward anonymized feedback to other entities who we notify who are similarly situated. One interesting fact is that we also have a wonderful CISA sister team to ours called the Ransomware Vulnerability Warning Program. We love our acronyms here, RVWP. So we provide them also with information about the vulnerabilities that we see being exploited so that they can do proactive prevalence polls and send out notifications to those organizations who are showing for them. So we're adding even more value on top of just the notifications themselves. So I guess in summary, just understand that CISA may reach out to your organization to conduct a notification, and the way that you could verify that at any time is just by contacting CISA directly, and our CISA Central, our watch floor will help verify.
So it's funny you mentioned just clicking on everything, and how many times I've worked cases where they're like, I didn't click on anything. I would never click on that phishing email. Then I've pulled up a screenshot, and I was like, you got to kind of pave the way a little bit. Well, they look pretty convincing. It's totally understandable how you would do that. And you pull up a screenshot, and it's like, oh, I remember that. But you mentioned, you notify them immediately. What is your typical turnaround time? Because, and I'm sure Ryan, you would probably agree, we used to see threat actors in an environment for a couple of weeks, and that time is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So, it could be a matter of hours, sometimes 24 hours, or just a few hours from when they breach the environment, just depending on if they want to go through the data exfiltration, how quickly they can do it till they get to that encryption moment. How quickly would you say you're acting on this? Because it sounds like you do have to do a lot of work. You're vetting it. You're making sure, everything's actionable. You're doing a lot of steps in the background. So I was just curious, like, what your typical, turnaround time for that is.
Yep. So it's definitely true. We have seen cases where our threat actors can get domain admin, like control over the network, in as little as 8 or 9 minutes from initial access, which is quite a short time horizon. So we try to do the best that we can to make their business model unsustainable, and that means speed. So yes, we can notify sometimes in less than an hour or hours. So often our notifications are same day. There are also cases where after an incident has already occurred, we didn't get forewarning. Some of the partners might come forward with information that can help the organization recover or understand things that occurred during the intrusion, and that's something else that we help with as well. So we try to be speedy, but even if we don't get information in time, it's not shared with us in time, we try to do everything that we can to resource organizations to protect themselves and understand what may have occurred. But yeah, this is This is same day. This is minutes and hours.
That's fantastic. I wanted to harken back to a point that you made about reaching out to your local CISA contacts. This is something that in 528 we mentioned specifically. For example, your local FBI field offices. Do you know what it is? Do you know who the contacts are? Do you know who you'll communicate with? And we have a section called, essentially, a module called "You're ransomed. Now what?" And in there, we talk about preparation. And one of the very important things is to understand key players and related to those key players, their contacts, and not just, oh, this is so and so, and we can contact her via this phone number, but rather having proper call trees, truly understanding on call situations or not, knowing really how to get a hold of the right people. And we talk about setting up all the above, and that includes, FBI contacts and CISA contacts. What is the best way for an organization or someone watching right now to essentially get a hold of CISA? Is it just a contact form on your site? Is it a phone number, or just what's the preferred method?
So anybody can just email or call CISA Central. That's our 24/7 operations, and they will answer questions. They will connect you with the right resources. On CISA's website, there are also region-specific pages for our 10 regions, and that has contact information for how to reach the folks that are local in your state. They're in your communities. They're there to help, and these folks do no-cost assessments. They can perform cyber protective visits. They can participate in exercises, so they're there to do all those things.
I love it. Another thing you mentioned was, ransomware actors loving to exploit current vulnerabilities. A lot of times people think that the bulk of exploitation occurs via 0 days. And for anyone not familiar, the concept of a 0 day being no one's really aware of it. There's no patch, obviously, for whatever that particular threat vector might be. In reality, that's not quite the case. Yes, there have been some big 0 day issues related to ransomware, like the CLOP team leveraging MoveIt. MoveIt's 0 day at the time and hitting a number of folks, in one fell swoop, if you will. Well, it's kind of not one, but you get the idea. But in reality, there's so many organizations out there who don't really keep their eyes on the prize. I don't know if it's a lack of vulnerability management, just regular vulnerability scanning, change process boards that ensure that changes aren't making things more insecure, by trying to fix something, whatever it is. But the global researchers that are out there, a lot of them are really adept at scanning. And when there's a new vulnerability out, as soon as it's announced, however it may be announced, on the darknet forums, the threat actors, the ransomware actors, they are all over it. They're using systems like Shodan and Census and what have you, and they're identifying vulnerable devices and vulnerable victims and organizations and entities in doing so. A lot of organizations are not doing that themselves. They may not even really know what their external, visibility looks like. I should say what their visibility looks like to an external attacker coming in. They don't know they have a certain system, maybe SharePoint, exposed. So these researchers are doing a really, really cool job. And if a new vulnerability comes out with a particular product or service or whatever, they're actively scanning and identifying, okay, who's vulnerable out there? And then, all right, what are those IPs? And what are, anything they can discern from their scanning results to then work with folks like Dave and CISA to identify and let them know, hey, by the way, ransomware actors are leveraging this particular vulnerability. They're exploiting it. They're getting in. They're doing all their dirty deeds. And so how often do you find that the researchers out there, based on that type of scanning and letting you folks know about potential, victims because of that, is that kind of like a big part of the notifications, or is that maybe a smaller part? I'm just kind of interested to see how that works out.
Sure. So just the presence of vulnerabilities is something that would be handled by that ransomware vulnerability warning program. So they're the ones that are proactively collating all the information we have from CISA's internal vulnerability scanning, which I'll talk about in a second, researcher tips, other information that we receive, and then they're making those proactive notifications to let folks know that they're showing for those vulnerabilities. So when it comes to our no-cost vulnerability scanning program, I would be amiss if I didn't mention that. So we offer here at CISA a no-cost vulnerability scanning tool. This is where we give you regular password-protected encrypted reports every week, scanning your internet-facing attack surface only. These are unauthenticated scans. And one of the key features of these scans is that we mark which vulnerabilities are specifically known to have been used in prior ransomware-related intrusions. So it's something that gives you an additional layer of prioritization. But yes, we've got the researchers out there all day, every day, doing proactive scans, sharing with us voluntarily, and then we are collating that with information that CISA is taking in from our own capabilities and using that to notify.
Speaking of which, Bushido Token, also known as Will Thomas, a SANS author, instructor, and overall amazing threat researcher, runs a GitHub repo called the Ransomware Vulnerability Matrix. And the entire idea of it is that he provides not just, hey, these particular vulnerabilities have been leveraged by ransomware actors, but actually provides references to articles that denote specifically how that was done, or just the fact that it was done, along with the ransomware groups associated, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Alan Ransomware Sommelier Liska, who I mention on probably every one of these darn episodes. I love Alan. He also has a book out, and I'll drop the link in here and see if we can get that into the chat. It's just for528.com/book. And in Alan's book, he has this wonderful graphic. It's a bit dated now because they're like 2022 and then a couple years before. I actually have it in 528. We cover it in the course, and we highlight the fact that a lot of the vulnerabilities are for things that we use to run our global IT, like all of the things, right? We've got things that are built to secure us, firewalls, VPNs, things of that nature. We've got email systems, file sharing systems, platform as a service, software as a service. So it just wanted to throw those two references out there. Again, the Ransomware Vulnerability Matrix on GitHub, and then for528.com/book. You can go check out those resources and find, just get a little more, some of the older stuff, but kind of put your head in the right space of what to be looking into. And then the newer stuff on Will's GitHub repo to get a feel for what you really need to make darn sure that you're addressing within your organizations. All right, let's see here. Do I have any questions in the chat? I'm looking for one. There was a good note here from Necton Cruiser. It says, Dave, just amazed that you can keep your cool when some victims you may contact inevitably deny everything you were trying to tell them and or think you are a scammer. So from you folks, from CISA doing the notifications, how often does that happen? Because I'm sure that it does.
Happens all the time, and usually it's something that we're able to address just by explaining how to verify. Sometimes our cybersecurity advisors can go on site, or we can enlist the help of our partners in law enforcement like the FBI, just to show a face, to show a name, so that they understand that we mean well and we're trying to assist them. But yeah, there are times when folks just don't understand, they're not receptive to the information, and that's fine. All the engagement with CISA is voluntary, but obviously that causes some challenges to us in trying to make contact. I think, this is kind of an interesting question because it really speaks to the maturity of the security program of the entity that we're reaching out to. Let me put it this way. I guess we can ask these questions. Do they have a security program that is just mature on paper, or do they have the maturity to understand that there could potentially be others that have information that could help them? Can they internalize that information and act on it quickly, or are there too many barriers? That's sort of the deciding factor. So we definitely encounter situations where there are IT folks who don't understand that verifying our contact by reaching out to CISA is definitely a way to confirm our outreach is legitimate. And although we try to be speedy, trying to notify within minutes or hours of receiving information, obviously that can cause some challenges when folks don't understand that is a legitimate process. Another example may be that sometimes disconnecting the affected network from the internet may be the only prudent option if the situation is truly severe enough. So we're talking about like a full-blown identity compromise, threat actor is already exfiltrating data maybe, or has domain admin on the network. So sometimes what we encounter is that maybe the business side of the affected organization may not be prepared to make that decision, or they may not have empowered the IT staff to make that decision. There can also be situations where rank and file employees who answer our call. They're the first line who we communicate with. They make that decision not to forward our contact to the IT staff as we request. So in these situations, those employees are essentially designating themselves as more or less a high-level decision maker, deciding if critical information makes it to the right place. So obviously, this can cause some challenges for the companies you're trying to notify, so they're not able to really mount a centralized or organized response due to the delays that there are in reaching the IT folks. So I think the bottom line is that organizations should really have a response plan in place in advance. They should exercise it. The plan needs to have the involvement of senior management, or folks are really just going to get caught off guard, and there's ultimately just going to be a challenged response when we reach out. And I think another key thing I'd be kind of remiss here if I didn't mention is that scoping the incident is important. So even if we're able to communicate, it's really up to each individual organization how they internalize the information and scope it. So a common mistake that we see folks make is treating the issue that we're notifying on as an isolated incident without understanding maybe the potential for broader implications. So they might treat a malware infection as an issue that affects only a single device and not as a potential identity compromise. So there could be a broad compromise of accounts related to that malware infection. And as we know, these identities, these accounts, they're kind of the enterprise perimeter in a lot of ways. So the reason this could be a pitfall is because they're not right-sizing the scope for investigation. And it could mean that the organization is still compromised and they may not know it. So it's yes, the initial contact is important, and our contact being taken seriously is important, but it's also being able to internalize that information and scope appropriately.
There's a question in the chat from Pedro that reads, so if we proactively find vulnerable corporations of some certain CVE, can we inform CISA and get backup by CISA for legitimacy? Overall, the idea that some organizations reaching out to other organizations, a B2B type of thing, business to business, that it may not be taken seriously. So would CISA do something like that? Would they be able to say like, oh, yep, so-and-so contacted you, they let us know about it, we also vetted it, etc.?
Good question from Pedro. I appreciate the question. I don't think that we're in a position of vouching for specific researchers, but if there are researchers who decide of their own voluntary accord that they would like to make CISA aware of that information, we will advise if we intend to action it and act on it. And we are happy to provide credit to folks who share information with us. That is something that's very important to what we do, and we believe in giving credit to the research community. So yes, it's not something where if we don't have a pre-established relationship and we don't know you that we can just vouch, but we are happy if you're sharing information voluntarily, we vet it, it all adds up, and you're sharing out of altruism, we're happy to act on that information, or at least give you feedback if we're acting on it, and give you credit.
Going back to what you were saying in terms of your initial contact, sometimes, for example, let's just say some threat researcher finds something not good. We'll just call it not good. Being hosted on a website, an IP address, whatever protocol, whatever. And they want to get rid of that. They're like, no, that's bad. So what we typically do is like run a who is, right? And contact the abuse contact. And as long as it's not like a bulletproof hosting service, usually they will then action that. But those folks work in, their abuse department or whatever it might be called at the given ISP or entity. So when CISA contacts an organization, can you speak to how you identify the contact methodology? And the reason I'm asking that is I'm wondering if we can give some tips and tricks. I guess you could kind of call it security awareness training, but more of a, if you find a contact via X method and it ends up being like the help desk, should organizations train certain people that are on certain teams or in certain communication programs or whatnot to take these things seriously? And that kind of comes from the idea of, remember back in the day, it's so common now, but back in the day when bug bounty programs weren't really a thing, and it was more a smaller circle for the royal we who kind of understood if a researcher messages me and says the following, I should probably take it seriously. So I'm wondering how that might apply to CISA notifications. How do you find the folks that you contact, and what are some good ways that organizations can help train those folks to understand the gravitas, the importance of what you're telling them?
So for contacts, Whois is a good source, but for us, it's the core of what we do is those pre-established relationships that we have through our field personnel. Speaking on Whois information, we will use that security contacts. Another tip, I think a lot of folks know about this, but using the security TXT file for a domain will give you information about how an organization wishes to be notified and the methods to use. I will say that often we also purchase commercial data that is available for contact information. So even if it's late at night, because we all know that the world's most fearsome cyber criminals don't work strict 9 to 5 U.S. Eastern Time business hours, we need to reach people. So we will purchase information as well. When it comes to training people how to take the information seriously, I think it comes back to trust but verify. So if you're receiving a call or a contact from someone who's saying that they're a federal government official, definitely reaching out to the agency that they work for is a good way to verify. I think another thing to note about our outreach is that we are sharing information via out-of-band means. We are trying to protect the sources of our information, and we're also trying to protect the organization that we're notifying from the threat actor becoming aware that they know what's going on their network. So definitely when we're reaching out, making good use of the phone, but also if we're sharing something in writing, not sharing it on the enterprise network, that's something that protects our partners in both directions. So that's something that we try to do.
I guess I'm going to pretend like I was fully aware of security context being a common thing in text records in DNS. You just taught me that. I was like, what? So yeah, okay. I have a link here that I'm going to drop into our internal chat, which will be dropped into our other chat. And yeah, essentially, it's for anyone out there who might be familiar with Dig, running a DNS lookup, just looking for Dig, the domain name, and then a text record, TXT, and then getting back security contacts, security policies, site verification hashes, things of that nature. I have no idea how I've worked in this industry for 13 plus years and never noticed a security contact in text records and DNS. That kind of boggles my mind that I missed that, and I'm sure that some of my buddies out there who are watching this now or later will make fun of me because of it.
That was a new one for me too, Ryan, so they'll have to make fun of me too. So that was very interesting to learn.
Yeah, that's freaking cool. So yeah, the link just got shared there, and then I won't put the dig command. It's in the article that I shared. So okay, that's pretty darn cool. I find that a number of organizations out there utilize software, services, whatever, from organizations, and yet who themselves don't keep a software bill of materials, an SBOM. So I'll try not to, I won't throw this particular company under the bus right now, and it's kind of old and they probably don't want to hear it again. But folks probably remember the Log4j issue that we had. I don't remember how many years ago that was now. Log4j. I call it Log4j. I assume that's the initial name and intent. There were a number of vendors who did not action and update their own software because, I don't know why, to be honest, but one of them in particular is pretty large and provides remote service connectivity options. Leave it at that. And some ransomware actors actually got into their environment, and because they exploited, a vulnerability within a module, a library that was integrated into that much larger commercial product. So just a note out there to any organizations, not only is it important for asset management, which everyone's horrible with, I know. We can all say we're going to do better, but so hardware management, asset management, software asset management, but also understanding as best as you can and asking your vendors, hey, do you have a software bill of materials? Like, what all do you use outside of your own custom software base? And a lot of times that'll be difficult to obtain because they won't have it, but push, give me, I want that. Just to help you, kind of shore up your defenses. If you're sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, our website doesn't use Log4j, we're fine, right? Well, okay, what external services do you have that do leverage it that could then be a problem, and when are their patches coming out? Just something I wanted to mention because it's been such a thing with ransomware cases. All right, another question from Pedro. Are there any SPOC for us researchers to contact CISA directly?
Yes. You can just contact us using CISA Central, and then they will route your inquiry directly. So that's no problem at all. I think when it comes to what Pedro was talking about earlier, the part of CISA that he's going to want to make contact with is the subdivision that I work in, vulnerability management. We're part of the cybersecurity division. So Pedro, definitely don't hesitate to just reach out to CISA Central and just request contact with the vulnerability management subdivision.
Cool. I just dropped the link into our little studio chat, and that will be shared coming up for CISA Central. And yeah, questions, report a cyber incident, clicky click, the phone number right there. Sweet. And I think we have some other questions here. Let's see if this one applies, and this might help better understand the scope of CISA's overall involvement, because that's something else that would be really cool to know. Essentially, do you notify and then it's like, all right, go, or is there Dave's like, no, dude. All right, so yeah, what more? Sorry, the question, I'm getting ahead of myself here, is if there's a need for victims to go down the paying route, maybe due to RTO, RPO, or insurance saying you have to or don't have to or whatnot. How are OFAC conversations considered in your experience? So I would also expand that to generally, do you get that far down the line with providing oversight, feedback, et cetera?
Organizations are going to make their own decision. I will say that as a U.S. government, we do not recommend paying. This may be considered a public service announcement. Please don't feed the trolls. I just want everyone to be aware that there are no assurances that your data will be returned to you or not released publicly. I can tell you that we are definitely aware of situations where affected entities pay and the criminals continue to retain their data. I think we don't get involved in decisions to pay or not pay, but that's the best advice that I could provide. And of course, to TJ's question, folks should be aware that there could be potential implications where OFAC sanctions apply. So this means that there may be an entity that is sanctioned by the U.S. government, and that you could be running afoul of sanctions by paying that entity. So this is a decision that every entity needs to make on their own, but we definitely recommend not paying. I would say other advice that we have for affected entities to help us make the ransomware business model unsustainable, besides not feeding the trolls, would be please share voluntary anonymized feedback with us. It helps protect others. After your investigation and at your discretion, consider reporting the incident as a crime to the FBI's IC3 or Internet Crimes Complaint portal. This is how the FBI takes in reporting and gets it looked at by the right case team and field office, and we want to make sure that they are getting the information that they need to do their jobs. And then I'll also mention that we, as CISA, we don't just keep all the information in. That wouldn't be neighborly, and it's not how we operate. If we receive information as feedback or as a tipper that's more fit for purpose for law enforcement investigation to pursue the threat actors, we share that with our law enforcement partners. So we at CISA, for those that don't know, in a national cybersecurity policy context, we lead asset response. So we protect assets, we mitigate. We're the cyber firefighters, as corny as it is. But the FBI, they lead threat response. So they're the folks actually pursuing the threat actors. So we have to be considerate of their role and also provide them the information that helps resource their mission as well. So yeah, when it comes to paying, we don't recommend paying. But in addition to not paying, which definitely creates quite a bit of friction among a ransomware gang that has, they're looking for a return on investment. They invest time, resources, and infrastructure. They have position descriptions. They have all manner of individuals and resources engaged. Not paying them definitely creates a lot of friction, but some of the other things I mentioned are things that you can do to further negatively impact their business model.
Mary and I both often receive the question, should I pay? Should we pay? Should victims pay? First and foremost, I hate ransomware. I use the hashtag ransomware sucks, which Sans lets me get away with, which is awesome. But I hate ransomware. I cannot stand it. I love working ransomware cases because they're so fun to work as a consultant and an analyst. That's horrible to say though. Oh, I love working cases where companies are completely breached. Like that's no what? So ransomware's got to go. And in the grand scheme of things, if you made it unsustainable as a business model by just no one ever paid anymore, okay, well, yeah, they're going to pivot, they're going to shift and find some other, cybercrime method to make money. Duh. But yeah, yeah. SANS cannot take an official stance to pay or not to pay, by the way. But just throwing that out there. You also mentioned, Dave, evidence of threat actor groups maintaining victim data, including following payment. Heck, we saw that in the Lockbit leaks from whatever year that was. Was that last year, the year before? I don't remember. But a number of groups and victim entities, were marked as paid and received decryptors and or not. And all of a sudden, with the Lockbit leak, it was, oh, hey, by the way, oh, they still have all your data. Oftentimes they will agree to delete the data, eradicate the data. Yeah. Fibs, dirty fibs. So, Dave, another question for you. What has the impact of the initiative looked like thus far?
Well, I can say at this stage that it really wouldn't be a good government showing if we didn't come prepared with some metrics and some numbers. So I'm happy for the taxpayers to know that CISA has now conducted more than 4,300 pre-ransomware notifications since late 2022. We estimate about $9 billion plus in potential economic damage avoided as a result. For those that don't know, we've also sent at least one notification to more than 60 international certs concerning affected entities in their countries and their areas of responsibility. So that monetary figure is based on avoiding operational disruption, loss of goodwill, emergency incident response contracts, litigation, and other costs. These are things that we would take into account as the true cost of a ransomware event. Sometimes just, people just refer to the potential ransom as the cost of a ransomware event, but we know that that's not true. So I will end by saying we hope to continue to make the ransomware business model as unsustainable as possible, working with our partners. And though this is just an estimate, we hope that we're making a dent and we're making an impact.
Love it. Just love it. Speaking of loving it, there's not a question, but a comment from Pappy, who I assume is our shared contact, Pappy, that says, no question, just wanted to tell Dave to keep up the great work. A little shout out to Pappy. How you doing there? And another question, another question here from Carlos. What is CISA doing to help organizations to be proactive with backup systems? If someone is wanting to pay, it may be because they don't have a good backup system, which we see over and over.
This is part of your cyber risk management, your controls, your security program. And this is something where CISA has put out guidance and best practices on this topic in the past. But if you need direct, tailored assistance and you have questions about this, this is something that our field personnel, our cybersecurity advisors out there in the country can help you with and help answer your questions, help you implement it. We cannot recommend commercial products or services, but this is something where if you have leadership that is questioning the investment, if there are folks that want to understand what the best practices are, that's something that we have folks that can help with that.
I just dropped a link that will probably make its way into the chat from US CERT data backup options and some good commentary there. And I was looking for, and that's actually hosted at CISA.gov and referenced in a number of places, including the 2 AI systems that I just checked. so there's that. Oh, another question that I saw here.
And Ryan, while you're pulling that up, I just wanted to make a comment about backups. It's so important to not just have them, but to test them. I can't tell you how many times I've worked a case and they're like, oh yeah, we have backups. And then they go in and they figure out, something changed, it's not configured, it's not working. So you can't just like set those backups to backup and forget about it. You have to be testing them and checking them, restoring from them, and making sure that your process is working too.
I don't know. I don't think so, Mary. I've been backing up to the same tape drive, like the actual tape, for 20 years now. I'm sure it's fine. Sure, it's fine. You're crazy. We cover a lot of backup stuff. I don't know about a lot, but we cover some backup stuff in the course 528. One thing for folks who may not be familiar with this concept, in many ransomware cases, your backup systems are being encrypted. So keep in mind, where are your backups? Look at that US CERT document in the chat. I'm pointing like you can see my screen right there. The link is right there. Take a look at that. Look at the overall concept, general idea of keeping segmented, like off, quote unquote, off network, whether that be in your data center, but physically separate, whether it be, there's groups out there like, what is it? Iron Mountain was a big one for, the longest time. Just throwing a random name out that I recall. The idea of, hosting your backups external to you. So many times, and victim organizations use some big name commercial and really good backup systems, but they oftentimes will do things like virtualize them within their, say, an ESX environment. And these ransomware actors, I mean, heck, the top 5, 10, they all have encryptors for ESXi at this point, right? I don't know about all the top 10 technically right now, but you get the idea. And so many times, the machine disk images themselves for your backup systems become encrypted. And we're like, oh, well, that sucks. Where else do you have your backups? They're like, well, they're on that backup server, that one right there. It's encrypted. And we're like, oh, whoops. Another thing to keep in mind that we talk about in the class is looking into immutable storage. Threat actors love to go and just delete your backups. Like, no, you can't back up, you can't recover. It's one of the things they'd love to do before, right before deployment. Delete basic things, volume shadow copies, if you're familiar, and then going in and trying to just literally delete your backups from your backup system. And they will oftentimes obtain access to it if they don't just outright encrypt it. Anyways, about to get on a little rant here. So immutable storage, the concept of write once, read many, or WORM, WORM. If you can find systems that leverage that, Microsoft has ways to do it in Azure, as do the other cloud providers, but look that up. Immutable storage can be potentially helpful. All right, let me check for any other questions here. Oh, Laura's got a good comment. And is the data you backed up actually fully there and complete usable? Yeah. Goes to Mary's point about testing those backups, which so many people don't do. All right, I'm going to move into probably the last question for the day here, and that is, well, I think you already kind of mentioned this. You kind of talked towards how victims can work best with CISA to make the ransomware model unsustainable. Any kind of final notes about that? But I think overall we kind of talked about like, well, don't pay them. That's one.
I think just one quick comment would be, we essentially crowdsource feedback that we get from folks that we're notifying. So when you're sharing feedback with the government, it's not just for the government, at least not the way that we conduct our business. This is information that's going to help the next person and the next person. So you're paying forward the notification that you've received and you're sharing information that's going to help somebody else who's having their worst day. So I would definitely frame it that way. And that's what we try to do.
Shout out to CISA in general. If folks are not aware, there are a number of advisories that CISA releases as, I believe it's all part of the Stop Ransomware campaign, right? Or is that just, right? If you're not tracking ransomware groups yourself, if you're not staying on top of evolving TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, let alone IOCs, I'm a big TTP guy versus IOCs. If you're unaware that CISA provides a number of advisories, I'm very well aware because, for example, I currently work, my day job is as a threat hunting researcher, and I work on a managed threat hunting team. We have a number of clients and they can send us requests and say, hey, can you look for so-and-so? We're worried about it because blah, blah, blah. So many times over the past, especially this whole year, they've been sending us CISA advisories and they're like, hey, this looks horrible. It's really well documented. Can you see if we're affected by that? And I'm like, there's another CISA report. Like you're churning them out all the time. Do you work potentially directly with the team involved in writing those? Is that like, how's that work out? Because that's awesome. Do they use your data? And I'll let you go.
Yep. So we work closely with our wonderful publications team. And a lot of the times those alerts and advisories, they're co-sealed with our interagency partners to show a whole government effort, sometimes even international partners. Recently, we've been giving credit even to industry partners who contribute to those advisories. So that's something where we don't want to go it alone. That's not really a good idea here. We want to work with everybody that we can that has insight and put out the most holistic, best quality product that we can. And yes, our team definitely works with the publications team that puts together those great alerts and advisories so that we are incorporating what we're learning into that alongside information from law enforcement partners, other federal agencies, and other industry partners. So that's definitely something that we want to do because it builds our trust and it helps everyone understand that we're not holding information in. If we're learning anything by conducting this operational activity, we're sharing that publicly so folks can understand how to defend themselves.
I love it. I love that the reports are not just, hey, we're seeing blah, 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 but literally here are the recommendations based on what we're seeing in terms of prevention, detection, like all the above. Just wonderful. All right, I'm sure we could probably talk all day going more into this, but we'll go ahead and move towards wrapping up. So, Dave, do you have any final comments, concerns, things you want to let folks know?
I have some comments. I've talked about CISA a lot during the stream here, and I want to move away from that a little bit just to have folks understand that we are truly lucky in this country to have a cadre of homegrown security researchers and cyber defenders who really, out of altruism, out of the goodness of their hearts, in their spare time, they take a deeper look at a security problem and they will do self-directed work, sometimes in collaboration with the government if we're lucky, to address those problems. So we're lucky to have these folks because we really can't defend critical infrastructure alone or our way of life. And their insights are really critical. And I hope through our little initiative at CISA, we are showing that we take their insights seriously and we act on those insights. So I guess what I'm trying to say, the most important thing I could say is thank you to everyone that's working with us and trusting us. We're proud to be part of the team. And Ryan and Mary, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, Dave. And one of the things Dave wanted to stress to me in our pre-show discussion was like, look, man, this would not be possible without the threat researcher community. Like, it absolutely relies on it. It's critical. Dave and I actually met in a particular circle of threat researchers who share a bunch of, details and helping with what CISA does. And without those folks, honestly, not just would CISA, be kind of hamstrung in these efforts, but me personally, working with threat researchers who are willing to share and collaborate, especially and almost entirely, usually on their own time/dime, it means the world to me. And that's just coming from one threat researcher who, I call myself a threat researcher. Most of my research comes from things that are documented by others, things that were written and developed by others. I stand on the shoulder of giants, and just a huge shout out to folks out there who provide such information to CISA and me. So thank you very much. Mary, what do you got? Wrapping up / where can folks find you, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of my final thoughts are, CISA is doing some amazing things. The vulnerability scan, the free vulnerability scanning, I think we all know. And I know a lot of times when I do assessments, one of the issues are, the team just already has so much work. They're not sure what to prioritize, what to tackle first. And the fact that you mark things that are actively being exploited out in the wild, I think really gives them a direction and a way to go. So that's just amazing. But I feel like, CIS is doing all this great stuff. There's still some responsibility that falls on the company, like you said, that preparation, the planning, the playbooks that come into place, the backup testing. Companies have, we all hate doing things that are good for us, right? Going to the gym, eating healthy, all of these things. It's like we still have the responsibility to try and get ahead of the ransomware by doing all of these other things too. So I am going to be teaching for 528, the ransomware course coming up here in September. Yay. So that's going to be in the network security Vegas, although I think this one's going to be remote. I would love to go to Vegas. And then in September, I'll be doing the 4500 course. So both of those coming up.
Awesome. For anyone out there, I go by right there, RJ_chap. I'm still on X/Twitter. I know a lot of folks went to Blue Sky, Mastodon. I never did it. So hit me up there. Find me on LinkedIn. I am teaching a workshop at DEF CON on the 9th, Saturday. So if you'll be in Vegas for Hacker Summer Camp, my workshop is currently sold out. But if you show up early and stand in line, you'll probably get a spot, because a lot of people get tickets and never show up. So annoying. But maybe you could fill their spot. I also have some upcoming, actually, I'm doing a couple privates. Oh, can't really tell you about those. They're special. So yeah, check out Forensics 528. More importantly, check us out here on the Stay Ahead of Ransomware live stream every month, the first Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And that would be, math is hard, 10 a.m. Pacific. I think that's a wrap, folks. Thank you all for hanging out. Dave, thank you so much for hanging out. I truly appreciate what you folks and you personally do. And it means a lot to us that you hung out with us.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.